I hope you're sitting down because once again, it would seem that the Trump regime has no idea what it's doing. You know, two of the biggest government agencies, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Agriculture, seem to have been working at cross purposes without knowing it and cannot seem to get their story straight on immigration. As you may be aware, recently, Donald has been very vocal about pulling back on ICE raids of farms and service industry places of business because that costs a lot to people in those industries, and it's basically destroying their workforce. And a lot of people in agriculture and in the service industries give Donald lots and lots of money, so he doesn't want to piss them off. Last week in Iowa, Donald vowed to put farmers in charge. Interesting concept. Watch this.
We want to have him come in and we want to have him help our farmers. You know, you probably saw I got myself into a little trouble because I said, I don't want to take people away from the farmers. And we're going to do something I think that's going to be good because we want all the criminals out. Everybody agrees. And we're finding the criminals, the murderers, the drug dealers. We're getting them the hell out of here. But the farmers, some of the farmers, many of you sitting right here, I have 4 friends right in the 5th row. But some of the farmers, you know, they've had people working for them for years. And we're going to do something. If a farmer's been with one of these people that work so hard, they bend over all day. We don't have too many people can do that. But they work very hard and they know it very well. And some of the farmers are literally, you know, they cry when they see this happen. If a farmer is willing to vouch for these people, in some way, Christy, I think we're going to have to just say that's going to be good, right? You know, we're going to be good with it. Because we don't want to do it where we take all of the workers off the farms. We want the farms to do great like they're doing right now.
Yeah, they're doing great right now. If it does not disturb you, shake you to your core, the way Donald speaks of farm workers as if they're chattel, it should. Just this week, Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins, who's a piece of work, said absolutely the opposite of what her boss just said there. And she added what she described as a solution to fill the farm labor void left by ICE raids and ICE thugs detaining migrant farmers and others. Take a look.
I can't underscore enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
No, thank you for being so vile and cruel, and no wonder you have your job. You fit right in. So she's completely ignoring Donald, and she's doing it quite publicly, contradicting him. He doesn't like that. But her proposal is essentially to vow to fill these vacancies in farm labor with automation or an American workforce, completely forgetting, of course, that the reason those jobs are filled by migrant laborers is because Americans won't do them. Oh no. Well, guess what? We have plenty of Americans to do those jobs, says the Secretary of Agriculture, recipients of Medicaid. Let's just throw them out into the field, even though, and I defy anybody to contradict me here, the work farm laborers do is highly, highly skilled and very, very difficult and physically demanding. You don't just throw people out in the field and say, hey, go do this job because it's unskilled labor. And also, fuck you. But it isn't just Rollins who's pushing the conflicting narrative. Some of Donald's close allies are doubling down as well. This is Senator Eric Schmidt, allegedly one of Donald's buddies, parroting this talking point on Fox.
The answer here is technology and American workers. The American worker, as we've talked about on the show before, Maria, has had the double whammy of terrible globalist policies that have shipped their jobs overseas to cheap labor in, say, China, slave labor in China, and then the importation of cheap labor here at home. And so that's why you have a lot of people who've struggled to find work. They've been sort of priced out of the market with illegal and low-wage workers. And the answer here is opening those opportunities up for American workers. You just saw a food processing plant open up that, you had some folks who were arrested and sent away, and then you had American workers actually sign up and do those jobs. It's a myth that Americans don't want to work hard and don't want to do these jobs. Of course they will, but automation, technology, advancement, innovation is also going to be key for agriculture sector as well.
Oh, wow. Fuck him too. By the way, it is a myth. I actually agree that Americans don't want to do hard work. Americans are very hardworking people. In fact, America treats its workers horribly, horribly. Just compare how European workers are treated compared to us, and you'll see that we get seriously short shrift. However, he's essentially blaming low wages on migrant farm workers. No, the people responsible for the low wages are the people paying them. I don't see them being held to any standards. I don't see them being told, hey, if you want to hire American workers, you're going to have to raise their salary. And also, by the way, while we're at it, why don't we raise the salaries of anybody doing those jobs anyway? Because, as I said earlier, they're very difficult, and most people either can't or won't do them. So people in the Trump regime are desperately trying to frame all of this insanity as an opportunity for American workers, when really what they're hoping to do is mitigating the damage of one disastrous policy by replacing it with another one. Okay, so let's justify our cruel and inhumane immigration policies by saying this is a great way to put more Americans to work, especially those we've screwed over by stealing their Medicaid. What could possibly be wrong with that other than everything? So here's Donald's own Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez de Ramir, doing the same thing and following the same playbook.
Well, we see it in the numbers. Americans are willing to do the job. That's what we're out there to do. What we have to give them is the opportunity to have those jobs, that they can be skilled, upskilled, reskilled. We're moving around the country. 1 million new apprentices is my goal for the president. We are well on our way. We've increased that by over 170,000+ new apprentices since he took office, and we'll continue and we'll reach that 1 million goal for the American businesses so they have the workforce that they need. And again, those decisions are going to be on behalf of the American men and women of this country who built this country.
Okay, well, here's the myth they're perpetuating, that Americans will finally be able to access these jobs. Bullshit. The Department of Agriculture found that in the past 18 years, temporary agriculture visa positions have increased more than 7-fold, indicating scarcity of farm labor and a total lack of interest domestically. Now, roughly 42% of farm workers are undocumented, which should tell us something. These sycophants actually believe that automation is something that we can do to replace actual human beings doing labor on farms. It's absurd. I'm not saying it won't ever happen, but we are nowhere near to having that kind of capability. Some crops are extremely delicate. Some fruits and vegetables are hidden behind leaves. Man named Juan Proaño, who's a chief executive of the League of United Latin American Citizens, told the LA Times, quote, if they could have automated picking strawberries and oranges, they would have already, unquote. No kidding. Of course they would have. Ventura County farm owner Helen McGrath said to the Times, quote, I can confidently say that most farmers in the country either laughed out loud or were just deflated by those comments. It just shows how uninformed and out of touch some of these officials are with what food production looks like in this country, unquote. Yes, why would the Secretary of Agriculture know anything about how people in the agricultural industry hire, or hire laborers or staff their farms. Why would she? Well, because that's supposed to be her job. But no, every single person leading an agency in this country is either an idiot, deeply incompetent, corrupt, or all three. And why is that exactly? Well, because the guy who hired them is all three of those things. And he likes the company. With all of this conflicting information, the takeaway is this. Donald is losing control of the one issue that he actually won on, which says a lot of horrible things about the people in this country, quite frankly. He's losing control over his immigration policy, but also the narrative about that policy in more ways than one. But before we go on, we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. Every day, we expose the lies the Trump regime tells and wants to keep buried, including the fact that should be obvious to everybody by now that they are in over their heads. So please like and share this video. And if you believe in our mission, subscribe to our channel. The new GOP farm labor agenda is disastrous on many levels. The Trump regime just cannot agree on its immigration stance, but one thing they are actually in accord with, harming Medicaid recipients because apparently they're not doing enough damage. Rollins claiming that Medicaid recipients will replace agricultural workers is ridiculous, yes, for the reasons I mentioned, but it's also completely outrageous because she suggested, quote, there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America, unquote. So let's break this down, shall we? Right off the bat, and this is something a lot of people don't know, but should, most Americans who receive Medicaid already have jobs. 64% of Medicaid recipients work, meaning none of these people will be available to pick crops. The other 36% are not, due to disability, caregiving, school, or retirement, employed. And that's as it should be. These Americans are on Medicaid because they have physical disabilities or they're living in nursing homes. So, do the people in the Trump regime actually plan to put disabled and elderly Americans in the field to pick our produce? Is that the end game here? Or are they going to raise the retirement age to 85? It looks like we're heading in that direction. I have to be honest with you, they probably want that. Many Medicaid beneficiaries also live in urban areas, which, no kidding, because most people do. And in general, this is also something that might surprise you. Urban areas don't tend to be near farms. As of 2020, only 17% of Medicaid and CHIP recipients lived in rural areas. 4 out of 5 enrollees live in urban areas. So what are we going to do? Are we going to spend billions and billions of taxpayer dollars relocating millions of Americans on top of taking away their Medicaid so they can pick zucchini? Maybe. The problem is I can't tell you because they don't know. There's not even a concept of a plan here, let alone details that would help us figure out how this is all going to work. We would need a massive number of Medicaid recipients to make up for the workforce we are actively in the process of losing right now because of the thugs at ICE and the disastrous immigration policies of the Trump regime. It's estimated that 850,000 of the 2.5 million farm workers in the United States are undocumented. And let's be honest here, undocumented is a synonym now for criminal. There are so many reasons that this plan is absurdly unworkable and logistically impossible. And here's what Rollins herself had to say about it today on Fox.
Ultimately, we have to move toward a 100% legal workforce, and that's what this president stands for, and that's what we're doing. The mass deportations will continue, but the president has been very clear that we have to make sure we're not compromising our food supply at the same time. So again, Congress has to fix it. Our Secretary of Labor is on it. We've talked about it nonstop.
Okay.
Our
It
H-2A
sounds like you
visa
don't
program
yet have a
continues.
concrete proposal to deal with farmers who rely on undocumented workers. Am I right?
Well, no, we are working on it. There's a concierge
You're working on it, but that's
system
not a
that's been
concrete
set up.
proposal.
Well, no, the president has been very, very clear. We need to make sure that the food supply is safe.
Yeah.
Lori Chavez DeRimmer is on it. She is leading the way. The H-2A program has been in place for a long time. The border has to be secure, and there will be no amnesty. So, listen, none of this is easy. We weren't put in place here for any easy
I agree with you
solutions,
100%.
but
It ain't
the
easy.
president is moving forward.
It's not easy, but I don't think it's fair to say there is a concrete proposal when you're still working out details to try to deal with the needs of farmers who need a lot of these undocumented workers, and at the same time not providing an amnesty. But
I have a brilliant idea. Ask this question. How? Is it that hard? How are you going to do this? And the answer cannot be close the border and deport more people and make sure the food is safe. How do the first two things help with the last thing? I think it's pretty simple. Anyway, we apparently are going to destroy our economy. We're going to destroy the ability of Americans to have the luxury of food while leaving major gaps in our workforce, leaving millions without health care, and likely impoverishing all of them. So, when it comes to Donald's inner circle, some of them seem to be falling out of line. If it seems that way, it's because Donald isn't the one actually running the show. All of the people we've heard from in these clips are absolutely on the same page, and they're on the same page with the guy who is actually in charge of this nightmare, the little Nazi, Stephen Miller. It seems that he is the main culprit behind the rhetoric about agricultural workers and immigrants, because again, he's a Nazi. Jessica Tarlov took to Fox and exposed just to what extent Stephen Miller is making decisions for Donald when it comes to immigration. Take a look.
Donald Trump said, I've been hearing from, my friends who work in farming, who work in hotels, leisure, et cetera. And there are a lot of really good people that work for them. And Donald Trump would know that because he had undocumented people working for him in some of his hotels. And then Stephen Miller got involved and he said, actually, no, we can't have any exemptions for anyone. This is mass deportation no matter what. And a lot of these people, Black and brown Americans, on the immigration issue, certainly supported Donald Trump, but his approval rating on those issues has been going down steadily since they've seen what this is. Quinnipiac, 41% approval, 57% disapproval, only 39% approval on deportations. And what they're hearing is that stories of how people are being picked up from things like immigration court, Home Depots. There was a story about a San Antonio area ICE detention center, a huge spike in 911 calls from people who have been detained there, reporting increased suicide attempts and sexual abuse. What is going on with this immigration policy is not what people showed up on November 5th for.
Did they not know that this is what they were voting for? I mean, Donald and people like Stephen Miller were quite explicit during the 2024 campaign about what they plan to do vis-a-vis immigration. And it was laid out in Project 2025, the fascist manifesto. But let's give some people the benefit of the doubt in this case. Tarlov is right. This may not be what some of Donald's supporters voted for back in November. And that matters because the margin of victory was so small. This is what Stephen Miller wants. Now, we could ask ourselves why Donald is willing to cede his authority to somebody like Stephen Miller, why he is okay with all of this. But I think we know the answer, because he loves it when other people suffer, especially those who are vulnerable. And if Stephen Miller hates immigrants more than anything else, and he is going to make sure that their lives are full of suffering, Donald is okay with that too. Others have tried to steer Donald in the other direction, knowing that the optics aren't good and that, maybe there really are some people who are having second thoughts or are alarmed by how extreme this has all become. But as Iowa's top paper, the Des Moines Register, has shown us, Donald is not the one they need to be speaking to. Reporting says the following, quote, carve-outs for certain industries have been rejected by some voices in the White House, such as Stephen Miller, a deputy White House chief of staff who was a top architect of the administration's immigration crackdown, unquote. So, again, if we are trying to figure out why Stephen Miller has so much power here, it's because he knows better than most how to get Donald to do his bidding. Be as viciously inhumane as possible, and Donald will be totally cool with it. That is who is the President of the United States, and the person running things, at least in terms of immigration, is a Nazi called Stephen Miller. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.